Welcome to the Accountancy Club podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm joined today by Lucy Cohen, who probably doesn't need that much of an introduction, but Lucy is celebrating today 16 years of her business, Mazuma. So congratulations, Lucy.
Thank you.
Also a published author, twice over, multiple award-winning influencer and accountancy industry professional. And you've got, so it's kind of where do we start with the conversation, I guess, Lucy. So do you want to maybe just start by giving us the background? So 16 years on from starting the business, how did it happen? How you ended up where you are?
Yeah.
Just a bit of the backstory.
Sure. I mean, it happened because I'm an idiot, really. I'm very impulsive. And at the grand old age of 23, decided that I had an idea in accountancy and wanted to kind of go my own way with it. So yeah, 16 years ago today, in fact, 12th of July, we're recording this. So yeah, 16 years ago today, I started Mazuma. The weather was very much like it is now, kind of hot and muggy. And I remember sitting in my spare bedroom in my house and thinking, oh, right, okay, so what do I do? Like, what's my day supposed to look like? And we started off really wanting to create something for small and micro businesses, and that's always been the goal, still is the goal. A space that we still feel is quite underserved, where they need more support than is often available to them, and where accountants play a crucial role in delivering that. So we wanted a way that worked for them in terms of provision of regular information, that worked for us in terms of provision of regular money and income. And Bob's your uncle came up with a subscription service. And we didn't start off going, I'm going to create a subscription service. We started off going, I want to create something that I have regular money coming in. I know what my bill's going to be. I know what income I'm going to have. I know what work I've got to get done every month. So I know how to split my time between working on the business and working in the business. Yeah. You don't always get that right, but there are a lot of long days back in the early days. And yeah, and it's grown from there. So we bootstrapped a lot of the time until a few years back. We put the money back into the business. We grew. We moved out of the spare bedroom into an office which is about the same size as my spare bedroom, but it was an office, so that felt exciting. And we've grown then. So now we're at around we serve just under 3,000 clients across the UK. We've got around 38 people working for us, and we're targeting 10,000 clients by 2024. So
are you going to do all of that from the one location? Are you planning on having more than one location?
Yeah, all from the one location. It's all a remote service, always has been. We were ahead of the curve in the non-face-to-face aspect. We used to have to really really kind of sell it to people like, oh, you don't need to go face to face. It's unnecessary. You can get better service from not doing that. And actually now, in many ways, the pandemic somewhat helped us in that sense, because we don't have to explain that anymore. But we spent 14 years trying to convince people that face to face was unnecessary. So it just took a global pandemic to help us kind of really get that message across.
Yeah, well, let's not hope for another one, but I'm sure there's other ways to do that. What was I'm always fascinated when people set up on their own, and I've done that as well. So I set up on my own, and I know what it was like for me day one. How did it feel? What was your background before that? You were employed before that? You were working for a...
Yeah, so I initially worked for Jury's Hotel Group in purchase ledger, and then went on to work for Cardiff Council in accounts. But I moved quite quickly into a secondment on an SAP implementation project. So I quite early doors kind of got into this kind of tech implementation, change management, changing systems kind of fun. So yeah, got into that quite early on. And I think that's what kind of gave me the taste for the creation of change. I was 21 when I went onto that project. So spent a couple of years there, and then obviously set up my own thing.
Yeah. So what was, if you could kind of go back now, knowing what you know, 16 years on to the day, if you could go back and talk to Lucy, who was about to embark on this, what would you be saying to her? What advice would you be giving her?
Oh, hire people sooner.
Right.
So
okay.
you want to hire people before you need them, which sounds so counterintuitive. And when you're kind of you're strapped for cash because you're a startup, you end up taking on too much, and so you end up kind of working in the business in the day and then on the business outside of that, and then you get to a kind of critical mass where you're doing so much yourself so competently and so quickly, you actually feel like you can't give it to someone else to do, because they'll never do it as well as you, and then you don't have the time to train them to do it. So you need to take people on probably about 20% before you really think you need to, essentially.
Right.
So at the moment you start thinking, oh, maybe I'll take someone in 6 months, you should probably hire them now.
Right. Okay. That's good advice. What about in the same vein? What about systemizing the business? Are you a believer in sort of systemizing processes and kind of optimizing them so that people can just pick them up, or what's your philosophy around that sort of thing?
Yeah, I am systems go, systems for everything. Sorry, the ambulance just going past my house. Yeah, systems everywhere, and we've always been super highly systemized. I will systemize the heck out of everything I possibly can. Basically, I'm a fundamentally lazy person. I don't like doing stuff. So if I can get something else to do it for me, spend a bit of time automating something or teaching someone else how to do it and coming up with a nice system for things, I'll do it. We've always been like that. I went from very manual systems, through to, you went from like literally work in with an inbox, work out with an outbox, and how you get it from here to here in a very physical sense. We kind of went through that, and then that's turned into the technology offering, that's turned into the development, that's turned into all of our onboarding. And it's all about getting from point A to point B in the fewest number of steps. And I've always been like that, because I think I've always recognized as well that the value in the company comes from me not being crucial to it. Like, I should be redundant, really. I shouldn't be the one that has all the knowledge. And I sort of proudly say that if anyone asks me questions about how does this work in the company or who does this, like, I have no idea. Ask someone more competent than me. And that's kind of how it should be when you're kind of in a CEO role. You should be the person that is able to have the oversight, to have the strategic decisions, has your direct reports. But in terms of getting into the weeds of things, you've got to put the people in to make the trust, to get them to operate in the right way. And like you said, those systems are just crucial.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Did you design that up? So did you have a vision of what that kind of, those workflows and that systemization and all the tech stack, did you kind of see that in your mind's eye before you set out to create, or did it evolve organically over time?
It very much evolved. So, we started in 2006 before tech stack was a phrase anybody used. Everything was still very much desktop, cloud. A website was just an online brochure for your business. People still talked about getting listed in the yellow pages, and online yellow pages like this whole new thing. We came from an era where tech stack wasn't something you really considered. It was just about how am I going to get new clients, and then how am I going to, for me it was about, I want X number of new clients. I know that I don't want to work all hours of the day. How am I going to get this done as quickly as possible in the most efficient way as possible, also to deliver a great service for the clients? I don't want to be sitting on work for 4 weeks, and I want it in and out the door in 5 working days is what we came up with, because it's basically a week. So and that really easily broke down what a month looked like for us. And then obviously as technology's developed, I'm an early adopter. I've always loved a bit of tech. So new gadgets, new toys, new shiny things. It's been a case of finding the things that are going to enhance the offering, and then implement them, test them, measure them, make sure they're embedded, and then add what's next to it. So it's kind of evolved. When we went into developing our own technology, we obviously looked at that, kind of took an overview on that, and we went, right, what do we want it to do? How are we going to do it? And then who's going to make that happen? And so we had a bit more of a strategic approach then, but certainly in those early days, it was all about just evolving.
That's really interesting. And I think just changing tack slightly, I think one of the things you guys have done, you individually and Mazuma have done really well is, and I think a lot of accountants are struggling with this, so I just want to explore it a little bit with you, is you've begun to brand the business, you've begun to brand yourself, and you've kind of set yourself out there, and I think 10,000 or more followers on Twitter, and on you've got other platforms as well. How much has that played a part in the success of the business, do you think? Is that something that more people need to do more of in accountancy? Because it's something that a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah, chicken and egg, I think.
Right.
The business was doing well really before I had a personal brand. So we've always kind of attracted attention in terms of our story. So we're a good press story. We've been friends since we were 11. We started the company young. We're two women. There aren't that many kind of especially when we started, there weren't as many female founded companies in the accountancy space. And so we kind of attract that attention. We also kind of we couldn't afford PR, we couldn't afford marketing. So a really good way to get your name out there was to enter awards. So we entered awards. So we kind of got a bit of a bit of a profile from that. We had a good profile, and then we sort of started shying away from it a little bit in terms of we were very aware that there are a lot of eyes on us and people watching what we're doing. And we had a couple of instances where quite unpleasantly people had kind of ripped off what we'd done. Right. Someone literally tried to pretend to be us to kind of take clients, and it was very unpleasant. Wow. Yeah. And we ended up in kind of a legal wrangling over that, which we won ultimately, because you can't pass off as somebody else to nick their clients. But it made us really, it stung us, it made us really scared of having that kind of profile. And I think the lesson there is if you're going to put your head above the parapet, then people are going to take pot shots at you, and you have to be ready for that. Right. So we kind of came away from it for a few years, and then slowly we wanted to kind of let what we did speak for itself. So there's the thing here is that it's very easy. I say it's very easy. It's simple. Video and platforms, the rest of it. You can post a video today, you can build a following, and all the rest of it. But if you've got no substance behind you, it's kind of meaningless. So I think that there's an authenticity piece here. So making sure that what you're putting out is authentically you, that it feels like you and your brand, it feels like you and your business, and then doing it to a level that you're comfortable with. You don't have to have this huge, personal following or brand following to have a successful business. It just has to align with what you want your business to do. My following compared to others is relatively small, but it's aligning to what I want to do. It's focused on how we want to grow, and that's absolutely fine. In more recent years, there's been a bit of a devolution, or so I suppose I see more my personal brand as supporting what the business does. But Mazuma and myself, whilst I'm in leadership there, it's important, again, for the value of the business. At some point, my business partner and I have talked about kind of wanting to exit in some point in the future. It's important this business is viewed as and can run autonomously from us. And so therefore, keeping those a little bit separate is probably useful for us. But no, it's an interesting piece, and it's something that this wasn't a question I ever got asked 5 years ago, because having this kind of personal brand and following wasn't really a thing. It's really, especially in the accountancy space, it's really come to light in the last couple of years specifically.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of people kind of look at it, as you said, they look at it and think, I feel like I should be doing it, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. So it's interesting that you kind of, you make a differentiation between what the business is doing, what you're doing. And I guess your role is not to be in the spotlight, but put a spotlight on the business.
Yeah, I'm a conduit for it. My values, beliefs, and what I stand for as a business person are aligned with Mazuma. And so it's being a voice of our customer base, but also in terms of accountancy, kind of, I've walked a path of 16 years now. There's probably highs and lows, and I've been there. So being able to kind of share that experience for other practitioners is important to me as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So I think one of the things that I know you have been quite vocal about is mental health, and I think particularly during the pandemic, the lockdowns and all that sort of stuff, you did quite a bit. You focused, whether that be through social, because that was pretty much the only way you could connect with people at that point. Why is that so important to you, I guess, is the first question.
So I come from a family where there have been mental health issues in my family, so I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it treated and untreated. I've seen how devastating the effects of it can be on the individual and the people around them. It's also something I've suffered with myself. So I wrote a piece probably a couple of years ago now about having had depression for a year and not really realizing how much I needed treatment, and then when I got treatment, realizing how bad it had been, and that sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees when you're in that position. And it felt like, I'm an avid, as you probably noticed, avid oversharer. So I don't really have much of a filter. And so it felt really cathartic and natural for me to share that journey. And I shared it initially for me, because I really believe in I keep using this word authentic, but I believe in presenting the real version of myself out there. I haven't got a corporate Lucy and a kind of home Lucy. They're very much kind of one and the same thing. And it felt like something I should share. And then the outpouring from people when I did share it just blew me away. I was getting hundreds of messages across LinkedIn, Twitter, all the platforms, Instagram, telling me, I've just read your article or I've just watched your video. Yeah, I didn't think anyone else felt this. It's been so hard. I'm so glad you said something. And I was just like, wow, that gives me goosebumps just talking about it just now. The number of people and from all walks of life and all demographics telling me how they'd suffered and how I didn't think what I did was particularly brave, but people kept on saying it was really brave that you said that and that they felt kind of empowered to talk about it now. And I was like, we need to have this conversation, especially like you said, Jim, the last couple of years for accountants have been brutal. And so many of them are suffering with burnout and anxiety and depression and then further uncertainty about what's going to happen next. I didn't go out again. I didn't go out with the intention of that being part of my brand, if you like, or part of what it was, but it's just something I've experienced and something I shared, and it resonated. And on one hand, I'm really glad I did it because I'm glad I spoke up because clearly somebody needed to, but actually it's really sad that we got to a point where all these hundreds of people who contacted me felt they didn't have that platform or that voice or the strength to say it. So all I hope with that is that people know that on those days when you're kind of in a pit of anxiety or it's all a bit too much and you're feeling burned out, they know it's not just them. Like there's plenty of people feeling like that, and it's normal and okay. And there are people out there you can talk to about it, and they can always just drop me a LinkedIn message. I'll happily go, yeah, I've had a terrible day.
Where do you think would you take that anywhere, or is it kind of, did it have its place in time, or is it something that you want to maybe give more attention to in the future, or not?
I mean, it's something I'm very passionate about. So this kind of, it's part of the background of the book, in fact, that when I wrote Forget the First Million, I actually started writing that before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and then I had depression for a year, and I kind of lost all my creative mojo, and I couldn't write. And then I kind of got over it and felt really kind of motivated to get this message out. And the message mainly in the book is about if money is your only goal, you're not going to lead a purposeful, fulfilled and happy life. There's nothing wrong with wanting to accumulate personal wealth, nothing wrong with that at all, but it can't be the only thing you're about. That's it. You can't be Scrooge McDuck. You can, there's no point having a room full of gold. But mental health plays a part in that. Feeling like you have purpose, feeling like you have passion, mental health plays a huge part in that. So part of writing the book, with again another cathartic thing, was getting this message out I'd wanted to. But the mental health thing is something I'm very passionate about, and I do get asked to talk about it. I'm always very happy to share my story. So if there is a place going forward, and again, as long as it's needed, as long as people, I'd love to get to a point where I don't need to talk about this stuff anymore, because
it's dealt with, and it's
because it's dealt with, and because the stigma's gone, and it's just very normalized. So until that happens, I'll keep talking about it, and then I'll have a little celebration when it's normalized. I can find something else to bore everyone with.
That's so I guess you've been in business 16 years. You've got thousands of clients. You must have seen many more thousands of clients who've kind of come and gone. What I know one of the things you're passionate about is kind of building and scaling businesses. One of the things that I spend quite a lot of time sort of reflecting on and thinking about is how do people kind of pinpoint where their purpose or their opportunity, coming back to the point you just made around, it can't just be about the money. So what's your experience of people setting up in business, and how they kind of they find that purpose or that kind of thing to focus on, the thing to build, and then that leads to the conversation around scale later on?
So most people, unless you're going for like VC funding with some kind of new widget or whatever it is, most people start a business, they've worked for somebody else and they're not happy, or they've got a passion, cake making, knitting, whatever. They've got a passion that they'd love to do all the time. And then they go, I could make some money from this. I'm going to do that all the time. So either accountants will go from, they've worked for somebody else and they're a good technician and they're frustrated at the thing they are, go, I could do this better on my own, off I go. And that tends to be what accountants do. Or other businesses have done the same work for someone else, or they have a passion they want to turn into a passion into pipeline. So that's how they start off. And the first goal is literally just to cover your own income. So all you're doing is you're covering yourself. Like, what have I got to earn to pay my bills? How am I? What have I got to earn to have some time off? Can I make some savings? Got to put the kids through university. How do I do that? And that's goal number one. And that's a good goal, because whether you love or loathe capitalism, money's the thing we trade in for goods and services. So that's a good goal. And then they get overwhelmed because it goes well and they've not spent time doing systems. And so they get overwhelmed and they're like, this is terrible. I'm working so hard and I'm basically on minimum wage. And why did I ever leave my job? And I haven't got any sick pay and I've not had a day off in 3 months. And I'm working weekend and I'm seeing my family even less. And that wasn't the point. And that's the moment everyone's a genius in hindsight. 20% ago, you should have hired somebody. But that's the moment where you go, right, what do I want to do? Do I want to be boutique? If you're boutique and you want to stay small, you ramp your prices up, you get rid of the clients you don't want, and you keep the ones that will happily pay for that boutique service, and you cap and you don't take any more. And you make that boutique service the absolute gold star boutique service of what you do. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is fantastic, because that will give you the time off you want. That will give you the time with your family. That'll give you the money you want. It will give you the life that you want. You don't have to go into this with a huge hockey stick curve and a pitch deck and all the rest of it. You don't have to.
Yeah, it's a classic lifestyle business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think lifestyle business sometimes
it's a bad rap.
Yeah, it does. And it shouldn't, because ultimately everyone wants a lifestyle. We all want to have a lifestyle. So lifestyle business is not a dirty word. And they should be celebrated, and they're like the lifeblood of the economy. If you do want to scale, then you've got to decide to strap in for maybe a couple of uncomfortable years, years where you're going to feel pushed beyond your boundaries, where you're going to meet challenges that you have no idea how to fix, and it can be very challenging and scary, and you have to kind of be okay with that. You have to be okay with going, I'm not going to know all the answers, and I'm going to get it wrong, and I'm definitely going to make mistakes, and you are going to go outside of your comfort zone, and that's the scaling piece. I love that bit. That's the bit, like, that's how I get my jollies. I'm a problem solver. I love I'm good with my back against the wall. I love being presented with a problem and coming up with a way to solve it.
Are you a risk taker?
Yes.
Yeah,
I am, but my business partner's not so much.
Right. That's good balance.
Good balance. We'd probably be bankrupt if I was left on my own, if I'm honest. I love spending money and she hates it. So again, really good balance. But you have to be willing to take those risks and to dare boldly. You don't get to there by doing what got you to here. There are some big moves you've got to take to do that, and you kind of just have to be okay with doing that. And risk reward, if you look at, I've spent time in sports as well, I've competed. You sometimes I used to be a powerlifter. In order to get the medal, you have to go out and lift a weight you've never lifted before in your life. You've never touched that weight before in your life, and that's a risk because you don't know you can do it. So you have to go out and take that risk in order to reward. And sometimes it pays off. Some days you're strong enough, and some days you aren't, and that's just the way it goes.
Fascinating. So you mentioned at the beginning of that answer, you mentioned the accountants who were working for a firm and decided to set up on their own. I've noticed a lot more of that in the last 3 years, two and a half to 3 years, than there's ever been. So I guess I'd like to explore what does that mean for not just them as individuals, but for the category or for the market overall. What does that mean in your view, and how will things evolve from this point forward? What pressures are the accountants under? How do they need to be addressing them? What are the opportunities for growth or consolidation? And what's your view on the market?
So I think it's a fantastic thing that people are going out their own. I love to see it. It speaks to the last couple of years of people being frustrated working for someone else, and just wanting to take control of their own time. We've had some of our staff have gone out on their own and set up bookkeeping businesses, just themselves, boutique businesses, the last couple of years, and more power to them. We celebrate that. We still work with them. We use them as overflow sometimes, so it's great because they know the business. But it's it speaks to people wanting to have more autonomy and wanting to take control of their own lives. I think for other firms, it leaves some challenges in terms of a talent shortage, in terms of good, because obviously they're good staff. The people who've got, the people who want to go and do that, they're great staff. They're self-starters, evidently. So it's going to leave an interesting challenge in terms of talent retention in firms that need more staff. I think we're going to face that as a challenge. But I think that the thing that is going to, I think we're going to see a bit of a kind of division between the kind of the high growth bigger firms who are going over after one type of clients and those that are kind of maybe setting up on their own boutique or getting to a kind of smallish size, 2 or 3 people, and that being their niche. I think we're going to see niching, again, which is excellent. Niching is great because it makes your marketing so much easier. It makes it so much easier to take on the right clients. And I think that all this is really positive for the industry. I think what it's going to really encourage, which as accountants, historically, when I started out, there wasn't this kind of cooperation between accountants that we see now. There wasn't this kind of banding together of accountants as one unit, which I love now that we're all willing to help each other and we're willing to have a community. It was kind of a bit more, and maybe social media has kind of led to this, but it felt a little bit more hostile 16 years ago than it does now. And maybe that's because we came into it young, we were doing something very different. But actually, I love that you see people going out their own now, starting up on their own, and you see people celebrating that, and other accountants offering help and mentorship and support. And I think that's wonderful. Just as a kind of peer-to-peer instead of as a kind of coaching program or something. I think that's really lovely. So I think we're going to see a kind of this people being quite happy to go, well, you've got your clients and that's that. So if I get someone who fits your profile but not mine, I'm going to refer them over to you. Or actually, I don't want these clients anymore. Do you want them? Let's pass them on. I think we're going to see this kind of era of cooperation in accountancy, which I'm really looking forward to.
So there's some common themes here, isn't there? Tying back to some of the earlier conversations around, the talent gap that's emerging because the good people are setting up on their own. So I guess the order of the day is to kind of look for specialisms or look for areas that you can niche down on and really focus in on, make sure that you surround yourself in the best people that you can find, and then set up some, in inverted commas, some sort of alliances or strategic partnerships that you can work together to sort of pass interest or business back and forward that are kind of adjacent to where you sit in the market.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, cool. So I guess the last thing that I wanted to just to talk to you a little bit about is what's next for you, and I guess just before we go there, what is it that keeps you awake at night? So is there all the positive things about the market and kind of where things are headed? What is it that you worry about from a market perspective and from a future perspective for the accountancy industry?
So I am 2 years of COVID, accountants worked very, very hard, and saw burnout, and now we've got cost of living crisis, fuel costs, energy costs. We're seeing hugely increased rates of business cessation. It is going to impact small businesses. We will see new businesses coming in the top of the funnel, but I worry about the impact, the psychological impact of maybe small firms that have not had client churn before, suddenly seeing clients leaving. That is something that keeps awake at night from our own perspective, because it's something that we have to deal with, but also from an industry perspective. Defaults, so clients not paying things, we've noticed it massively increase. It's increased by about 20% in Mazuma in the last few months.
Right.
So people just deciding to cancel their direct debit. When we ring them and say, you've cancelled your direct debit, do you not want to, was there something wrong? Did you not want to use this anymore? They'll go, oh no, sorry, no, and then they set it back up again and pay up to date. But we're seeing this trend of people kind of going, oh, maybe I can delay that payment a little bit, or maybe I've got to juggle things. And of course that creates more admin for us as a business. It's going to happen if your payments systems aren't easy for people to use, aren't super accessible, if you're not making it easy for people to pay, if you're asking them to jump through hoops to pay you, you're going to suffer. So advice I'd give to other accountants out there is get your payment system sorted, like get a virtual terminal, get card machines in if you need to, make sure you can get money off people. because that will impact your cash flow. And before you know it, a few clients haven't paid you for a few months, and suddenly you've got a big cash flow gap, and wages are coming down the line, or your VAT bill's there, and you don't have the cash to cover it.
Yeah.
So that's something that worries me, just sort of generally. And from our own perspective, we've got some big growth plans. Always, we've got technology developing that always keeps you up at night, because you fix one thing and another thing breaks, and technology is just never-ending wheel of bug fixes. So I don't
welcome to my world.
I'm gonna say I don't need to tell you that. So that keeps you up at night. And talent, who's gonna come into the business and help us in this next phase. That is something I think about a lot, and I think that's something that everyone should think about, is that your best team now could leave. They might decide to do something else with their lives. Life happens. Who's going to be there? What's your succession planning? What if your best person goes? What do you do? And that's something that I think about a lot, in terms of I hate seeing other practitioners kind of struggle and drown in it. And so they're just themes like I hear kind of chatting to other accountants. They're like, oh, this person's worked with me for 6 years and they're going to leave now, and I don't know what I'm going to do without them. And that's another thing about systemization. See, that's nothing should be all in. We have a policy that's literally called, if you were hit by a bus, and it's a policy that if you were hit by a bus, could someone come in and pick up your job instantly? And I think there's a culture thing there, in that people like to feel indispensable. And as a business, you can't really have people indispensable because of their energy and what they bring above and beyond what they can do. That's why people are indispensable, not because they're the only person who knows how to access that bit of software and use it. And so I think we need to do more work to make sure we have people working for us who understand that.
It's really valuable. So what's next for you then? Where does Lucy go from here?
So we finished the main part of the tech build. So the job this year is getting that embedded. So making sure that you test it, but we need to load test it. So making sure that it's running at scale so that it supports the next phase of growth, basically. So the job this year is to do that, which isn't very sexy and exciting, really. It's really boring. Just testing the tech we built. It's a really boring thing to do, but we've got to do it. And it takes a long time, to get enough data in there to make sure it's working properly. It's going to take a while. We're hoping we start crystallizing savings on that by October. That's probably optimistic, if I'm entirely honest, but that's the goal. I imagine that will probably slip to potentially we'll still be doing that by the end of the financial year, but certainly end of the financial year. So when we hit the start of 23, we start gearing up for the work around MTD and that marketing piece and that communications piece out into the world. And then it's continuing to develop the features within the technology and be very disciplined about only building things that people actually need, not a random list of fancy buttons and stuff that 2 people in the whole world like and no one cares about. Feature creep keeps you up at night massively. Things kind of going off target. So trying to hold ourselves accountable to the actual goal and really focus on our mantra this year, basically, is do only what works and then do it again. That's literally, I put it in our business plan for the year, do only what works and do it again. And that's as much for me as anybody else, because I'm like a magpie. I'm off doing the next shiny thing. So I need to very much focus on that. But it's about keeping ourselves accountable and just going, another sports thing, rugby, going through the phases, just going through the phases and working the phases to get the try. And that's that's what we're doing this year. So that's what's next.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with all of that. So if I believe you've got an upcoming event, first of all, and also do you want to just kind of let everybody know how, if they want to kind of follow you, get in touch, how they can do that?
So I post everything I do on LinkedIn, first and foremost. So any events I'm at, I love it when people come and talk to me. So come and have a chat with me. Sometimes it's a walk and talk between coffees, but that's fine. Any events I'm at, I always post on LinkedIn. So do keep an eye on my feed for things that I'm up to. Give me a follow, connect with me. I'll do slightly more jovial tennis chats and things like that on Twitter, Instagram. I'm on all the social platforms, basically. You can't get rid of me. I'm very boring. I'm everywhere. But and do engage and come and have a chat with me. And reach out and say hi. But LinkedIn is the one where I post all the events that I run at. Come and keep your eye on that timeline and book onto them, because I like seeing you all. It makes me really happy.
Brilliant. Lucy, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing rather than talking to me, so I do appreciate it. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks for having me on, Jim. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.